Hey, I'm Hunter from Skillthrive, and in this video, we're going to be building this UI component in Figma. Now, if you want to learn how to actually take this design from Figma and build it in code using HTML and CSS, make sure you're subscribed so you're notified when that video comes out, as well as other videos in this Design It and Code It series. Now, once you go ahead and create a new Figma file, the first thing I want to do is I want to create a frame which I'm going to be using to build my components. So I'm going to hit the F key to create a new frame. And out of the box over here on the right, you can see under desktop that they have this 1400 by 40 pixel desktop. Now, I just like to build off of a 1400 by 40, at least to start. And I also like to build off a 12 column grid. Now, you don't have to do this. It's just something I like to do in my designs. And a lot of times I'll take that design and actually will code it very similar with a 12 column layout in my code. So to get started to actually build that layout grid is I need to select the frame and come down to layout grid and click on this plus icon. Now out of the box, it'll actually create a grid, but what I want to do is create a column grid. Then I want to make sure that it is 12 columns. I like to just drop this down to something like 5%. And right now it's on stretch, meaning that these columns are going to fill as much space as there is available. But what I want to do is I want to set it to center and then adjust the size here. And what this is going to do is essentially act like a max width for my content on my website. And I like to just set this to a column size of 60 and a gutter size of 32. So the point that's really important is that whatever you do in your designs should also be reflected in your code, or vice versa. That way, when you're working with someone who is a developer, or if you're the developer yourself, you know when you look at the design that you want to create a 12 column grid and you want to add 32 pixels in between each column. And that just makes sure that your design and your code are similar, and it's better to work together with a team this way as well. So now that we have this grid created, let's go ahead and save this so next time we create a new frame, we can apply this same grid. So to do that, we'll click on this little icon here, create a new grid style. We'll call this 12 column, we'll just call it 12 column, and then create style. Okay, so now we have this, and if we create a new frame in the future, we can go ahead and come over here. We have that new grid style, and we can apply it to our next frame. So let's go ahead and get rid of this. And I'm going to create a 3 column card here. So let's go ahead and create a rectangle here by hitting the R key on our keyboard. And now we have the start of a new component. Now, right now, we don't really have any ideas of the colors we want to use. So what I'm going to do is I like to just create some squares here and play around with some colors. Now, the size of these squares don't really matter right now. I'm just getting an idea of what I want to do in my project. And you could, spend time and find some different color styles that you like. But in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Tailwind CSS colors, pick from some of those values, and then store those as color styles here so we can go ahead and use those really easily. So the first one here is I want to create a color with the following hex code. And then I'm going to create another one here as well. And then last, I'm going to create one more. It looks like those are almost the same, but they're not. And then one here as well. So what I can do is I can select this color. I can create the same type of color style, but this time it's going to be for a color instead of a grid. So I'm going to say gray slash, and I'm going to call that 900. Now this slash is important because what this is going to do is it's telling Figma to go ahead and group these into like a folder called gray. And you'll see that once we have more gray styles. So let's do that and then create another one. Call this gray 800. And another one called gray 700. You can already see right here to the right that we have these styles. If we click off into just the panel here, that we have these color styles that are nested under gray, and we have 900, 800, and 700. And this is really nice because remember with that slash, you're telling Figma to go ahead and group these under this gray folder essentially. So now we have that. Let's go ahead and create a couple of our lighter styles. So let's do gray 50. So again, I'm just going to copy these from Tailwind CSS, which I'll make sure I link that below. This one's going to be called gray 50. And I'm going to go ahead and do this for the next couple colors as well. So now that I have a couple more gray colors here, you'll notice that they're not really organized here based off the numbers, but if you're like me and want to keep these organized, you can always just move these around to a spot that actually makes sense. So they're actually now going to be the lowest value and then increase to the highest or darkest color here in our gray palette. Now I'm going to go ahead and create a couple more styles here, but let's say for instance, you came in here, you held Option to duplicate it, and then you dragged it out. So if you select this now, you'll see that it has this style applied to it. So if you change it to another one, you can see that you can quickly do that. Now let's say for instance, you wanted to change the color here. Well, to do that, you just click on this unlink icon, and now you have this hex code value that you can change. And I can do that for the other ones as well. And now what I can do is I can create a couple different color values here. So again, I'm just going to go ahead and create those styles right here as well. All right, so now we have a couple of gray values and we also have some color values. And now I'd like to just go ahead and create a white and black value. So again, I'm just going to come into this, unlink this. I'm going to make this white value just pure white. Again, add a new style, call this white. And the next one, I'm going to create a black, but this one's going to be a little bit of an off blue black. So I'm going to go not just pure black, but a little bit off of that to like something here. Then create that new style here. All right, so now that we have the color palette, you could keep this around if you want, or you could delete it because you now have these color styles right here. But for now, I'm just going to keep that so we can reference it if we need it. So then now it's time to come back to this card component. And I think now that I'm looking at this, I'm actually going to make this a 4-column card. So let's go ahead and expand this. And then with this rectangle selected, I can come into this fill and select this gray 900 value. And now that is linked to that. So anytime I actually change this 900 value, let's say I change and want to update this style, click on edit, come down here, you'll see that the card is also changing as well. Now, obviously I don't want to do that, but just to give you an example of how flexible this is, if that color value ever changed, wherever you use it in your project, you'll see that updated as well. All right, so now that we have this card UI designed, or excuse me, not designed, but the color of it set up, let's go ahead and continue building this. So the next thing I want to do is I want to add some curvature to this so it's not as sharp edge. So right now you'll see that it's just a rectangle, but if I select this and come over to this icon, I can go ahead and apply a border radius to all corners like that. So if we zoom out, you'll see now that instead of having that sharp edge, it's a little bit rounded, which is the look I'm going for in this specific card. So the next thing I want to do is I want to create a little icon section up here. So again, I want to create a new rectangle, and let's make it about, let's try 48 pixels. And then again, I'm going to make this 6 pixels rounded. And let's go ahead and move this about 32 pixels away and see what that looks like. So right now that's going to be 16 and then 32. So essentially this is going to act as our padding. So imagine that we have this padding around this entire thing that's going to be 32 pixels. And here, let's go ahead and just change this to one of the colors that we have set. Let's do sky. And for now, I'm not actually going to worry about the icons. I'm just going to go ahead and design the rest of the typography. So the next thing I want to do is I want to create a date over here. Now you can use whatever font face that you want. And out of the box, Figma comes with all the Google fonts that you can use, and you can also apply your own fonts as well. But just to make things easy, I'm going to use some Google fonts here. So to create a new typography, I can hit the T key and then click and then start typing. So in this case, I go ahead and do the date. So I can do May 16th, comma, 2022. So right now we're using this Enter font, and I think that's a nice font to use. So let's go ahead and just keep it there. But I do want to change some of the font styles. So I want to make this bold. So let's come down here and make this, let's actually do semi-bold. And I want to make this a little smaller. So let's do, right now it's at 12 pixels. Let's do, you know, actually 12 pixels is nice. If we zoom out here, because we zoomed in, it looks big, but zoomed out, it's actually a nice size. So let's go ahead now and align this to the top of this, and then let's see what it looks like to the bottom, and then centered. So I like top aligned, and remember, we want it to be 32 pixels from the top as well as 32 from the right, which it is. So now that we have a couple components here, you'll see that we just have these layers kind of just chilling over here in this. They're not really in this component. So let's go ahead and group these and call this a card. And now we'll see if I toggle this on and off, we have this new grouping here of this card. And if you want, you can go ahead and rename these and make them a little more descriptive. And now we can go ahead and continue forward with this design. So let's go ahead now and create like this little subtitle. I'm going to actually probably make this about the same size, and we'll just do a subtitle like, we'll say winter. And on this one, I want to do a lighter color. So on this, I think I had white. So let's make sure we actually label that to white. And on here, let's do like a lighter gray color. So let's do like a gray 100. Let's do a gray 200. Okay. And instead of semi-bold, let's make this not as thick. So let's do regular. And I think that looks nice. Now I'll worry about the spacing here in just a second. The next thing I want to do is focus on the actual title section. So again, we'll create a new type layer, and we'll do something like best design. Let's do best app design, whatever the title is that you want this to be. Okay, so now that we have a title, let's go ahead and add and change some of these styles for this typography. So again, we want to, let's make it a little bit more bold. Let's try medium instead of bold. Or actually, let's make this semi-bold and then make this one, go back and make it medium. Now, obviously, because this is a title, I want it to be larger. So let's try something like 20 pixels. Okay, so that looks good. Let's zoom out here. Okay, I think it looks good. Obviously, it's too wide, so you see that it's coming up to the edge. So you'll see that it's 24 pixels from the edge, so we need to make that 8 pixels shorter. So we could just come in and make that 12 pixels shorter, and now you'll see that we are actually able now to set the width. So what happened here? So if we go back, you'll see, if you focus down here, that we have this set to that, it's just set to auto width. And what this does is whatever we type out, it'll just keep getting longer and longer in order to fill the space. But what we want to do is we want this to be bounding to some type of size. We want it to be bounded based off of how close it is to the padding. So if we come in and adjust this, you'll see now that it switches to this auto height, which is exactly what we want, right? So we want this to be 32 pixels. So let's go ahead and -3. And now as we type, we want it to fit and be based off of the width of this, but the height is just going to be fixed for us. Okay, so that looks good. I think that gives us kind of this orphan down here, which some people would drive them crazy. So we can always change this a little bit. Maybe the title could be best designed e-commerce app. Now, you'll notice that for some people, this like orphan down here will drive them crazy. And I think that's a good thing to be aware of for like print, because print is like, there's only that one version of print, but this is a little harder to ignore or to not have in web, because your titles could be changing. You could have a title that's always longer or shorter just based off of the design of this. So it's really something that might bother you if you're coming from print, but for web design, this doesn't really bother me so much. So I'm just going to keep it as this orphan. But if it bothered you, you could always change the title of this in order to make it shorter or longer. But for now, I'm just going to keep it the way it is. So you'll see here that our width got a little messed up. So if we make that 32, we actually need to make this 3 pixels longer. You'll see now that it's based off of 32. Now what I like to do is to go ahead and group some of these into similar areas. So let's go ahead and just group this, call this title section. Okay. And now let's go ahead and add the last typography section here, which is going to be just like a location or something like that. So I'm going to come through and I'm actually going to move this out of this title section and call this location. And let's go ahead and do Atlanta, Georgia, because that's where I'm located. And I actually want these styles to be the same as this one up here. So the gray 212 pixels auto, and this one's auto too. Let's actually set this to a line height of 28. And this one's going to be the same. Now, you'll notice that these are the same. So could we create some type of typography style in order to share these styles so we're not duplicating? And if we want to change one, we can make sure that's changed all the way around. Well, yeah, we can do that. So what we can do is select this original one, come in here, and let's go ahead and just call this text / let's do small. And actually, I think let's go ahead and actually, because this 12 pixels is pretty small. So let's come through and actually change the name of this to extra small. Now what I can do is I can come in and select this, come in and apply that text style to this value as well. So now anytime I change this right here, it'll be reflected throughout my application. So now let's go ahead and apply some styles here to this as well. So this one's going to be this as well. So let's actually unlock this and be more descriptive. So this was on, I think, medium. So let's do text small medium as an actual style. So text extra small medium. And this, let's go ahead and unlink that. And this was regular. So text small, or excuse me, text extra small regular. So now you'll see if we look into our text styles, we have text. Now it's grouped by extra small, and we have medium and regular. Now this one we can actually get rid of because we don't want this style anymore. And I think that was applied to this one down here. So let's go ahead and make sure that that is going to be the text extra small regular. All right, so now the title, let's go ahead and set that to a size of, I think that was 20 and 28. So that could be extra large. So we'll say extra large, so text, extra large. And this is going to be semi-bold. So there we go. We can now see that under text, extra large, and semi-bold. All right, so now that we have our typography finished up, let's go ahead now and I'll worry about the spacing here. I'm not sure if I want that to be 32 pixels. I probably do want it to be 32 pixels. So let's go ahead and just move it now to 32. And the last thing we want to do is we want to create this area over here of a section of like some like different like layouts or designs. Now you could create this from scratch yourself, but if you're new to Figma, you should definitely check out this community section. So this community section is just essentially open source designs that people will share with you that you can use in your own projects. So you could do something like abstract designs, or Yeah, let's just do abstract designs, and we might get some different patterns. Or actually, abstract patterns might be an actual better search. All right, so that gave us a lot of different things here. So not really the look I'm going for. Let's do 3D patterns. All right, so I think I'm going to use this library. In order to use it, I can just click here and say duplicate. And that's going to create a new project in my Figma of essentially just duplicating that, and that way I can just use it myself. So you can see here how these are being applied to different designs. So let's come into the library, and let's go ahead and select one of these. So let's select this one. I'm going to copy it, so Command C, come in, and then paste it here. Now, I actually, it's not too bad. I think it's a little too big, so I'm going to hit K in order to scale this down. And also, you're scaling it down and keeping everything else relative as well. So let's just scale it down so it fits into this corner like this. And let's go ahead and just come it up like that. And I think I'm just going to move it a little bit out so that first row is just hidden. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom as well, just so that first row is hidden. Okay, so now that we have that, let's make sure that it's in this, actually I'm going to rename it to like squares. I'm going to make sure it's in this card section. So let's go ahead and move that down here. All right, so now that we have that design, you could do a couple different things here. Right now, it's just set to this fill of white. So if you want to keep it on white, it's a good idea to make sure you change that here. Or you could really just change it to anything you wanted. So you could change it to maybe the orange. You could change it to match the sky value, which I kind of like. But yeah, let's actually keep that there. So you can see that this square it's overhanging, right? It's not being cut off by this background. So what we could do is we could take this background, duplicate it, take it up right where it's below the squares, select both, and then mask it out. So come up here and then click on this to say use as mask. And you'll see that that shape of this background is now being used to mask out or to hide the parts of the UI that overhang. So now if we go ahead and select this card, you can see that everything looks the way that we expected it. So the next thing we want to do is we want to add some icons up here. Now icons, again, you can get from, you can download them from the internet, you can design your own, or you can come into the community and you can find some. Now I think one that I like to use, let's do Heroicons. So this one is by Tailwind. So let's go ahead now and click here and then duplicate this. So now we have some icons here that we can use. And I like some of the outlined icons. So let's just select like the first 4. Obviously you can pick the ones you want. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create a new page actually, call this icons, and then paste those 4 here. So you'll see now that there's this like purple section around this actual frame. So what does that mean? Well, this means that it's a component. Now a component are reusable little icons or anything. It could be icons or pieces of UI that you can reuse. And if you change one or the actual parent one, anywhere you'll actually use that component is also updated. So it's similar to other like styles as far as color styles and grid styles, and the fact that if you change the original, it'll be reflected throughout your actual design. Now, because we copy these from here, if we change them in this file, then it would be changed here. Now, you could work like that if you wanted to, but what I like to do is I like to come in and actually take these away from the main component. In order to do that, you could just duplicate them like this. I'm holding Option and dragging out. So that's creating an instance of this parent component. Then what you can do is come over into these instances and say detach instance. And now this is just going to turn this into its own little frame that's not, it's completely independent from this. So I'm just going to delete these. And then you can actually organize these the way you want. So I can say icon/mail, and then do the same type of naming style for the rest of these. So icon bell. This is going to be a home, and then the last one is going to be the briefcase. All right, so now that I have these the way that I want them organized and named, I can actually go through and make these their own components. So let's go ahead and right click, or the shortcut is Shift-Command-K, and create that as a component. Now, if I wanted to use this somewhere, let's say on page 1, I can come into Assets, I can see my local components, and then I can create and drag this component over and then use it wherever I want. Now, before I do that, let's go back into this page where we have our icons and finish creating those components. Now, what we could do is we could just go ahead and say create component for all of these, or the shortcut. Sorry, Option Command K, not Shift. If we do that, we now have these components. Now, let's say, for instance, we wanted to change different. So these are essentially the same thing, right? They're 24 pixels by 24 pixels, but they're different variants of the icon. So what we can do is we can actually select these. And Figma has this thing called variants, which if they're already components and they're similar, you can say combine as variants. So now if I click on this icon, you'll see that we have these properties over here, which list all of the different, essentially the names of the icons. So instead of just having it called property, we can change this to type. And now, anytime we want to use this, you'll see if we come in and actually use this icon, you'll see over here that we have this type and then this drop down of all the different types. So you can see that's a really nice and cool way of working with components, is to create these variants of these components. So I'm just going to Command X and copy that, come into this icon section down here, and then I'm just going to paste that here, come back into our layers, and we have the icon background and the icon. So that those should be grouped, and we'll just call that icon section. And instead of this black icon, I want to change the color of this. So I can disconnect it from where it was, this cool gray color, and set it to one of my local colors. In this case, let's just do it to a white. See what that looks like. I think that looks good. I think I might actually make this a little smaller. So let's come in and hit K to do a scale of this down to 20 pixels. Center that. And there we go. So again, if we wanted to change this in another card, we can always come in and change it to maybe a mail icon. And there we go. So now that we have this card component, let's go ahead and actually make it a component as well. So again, we can select this and do Option Command K. And now if we come into our assets, you'll see that this under local components, page 1, we have this card icon. Now, what I like to do actually is to organize this a little bit better and create a page just for my components. So I'm actually going to come back and Command Z to where we get to the point where this is not a component. And let's create a new page here called components. I'm going to copy this, paste it here, and then here is where I'll create the component. Call it just card, because this is our only card for now. We'll come back into page 1. Then we can delete this one, come into assets, down to components, and then select this card and drag it in. And again, because this is a component, anytime we change the master component or the main component, we'll see those changes reflected over our entire project, which is really useful because if we're using this in multiple spots, we can go ahead and make sure that those changes are seen. So again, if we come in and change this maybe to a gray 700, we come back into the page 1, we'll see this is actually reflected here as well. All right, so that's everything for how to design this card component in Figma. If you want to learn how to build this in code with HTML and CSS, be sure to follow and subscribe to the channel so you're notified when that video comes out. Or if the video is already out, be sure to check the description and I'll be sure to link it there as well. Again, I'm Hunter from Skillthrive, and I'll see you in the next one.